Okay, now here's Paul Ryan's spin on what went down in the meeting between himself and Donald Trump. He's initially going to talk about a bill to, I guess, now help white people get over their heroin and opioid addictions. And I'm not going to express my feelings on that, but he's going to start getting asked questions regarding his meeting, and that's really what I want to focus on.
Now, Howard, let's go to Paul Ryan.
Okay, let's go. Good morning. Right now, more Americans die every year from drug overdoses than they do in car accidents. Let me say that again. We have got more of our fellow citizens dying every year from drug overdoses than they die of car accidents. Today, the House continues to work on legislation to address the heroin and opioid epidemic across this country. And for those of you who were at our press conference yesterday, you heard from Susan Brooks and Bob Dole, authors of 2 of these initiatives. All told, by the end of this week, we are acting on 18 bills to deal with this. I'll actually be signing one of them today. It is S32, the Transnational Drug Trafficking Act. This allows prosecutors to go after drug traffickers in foreign countries if we believe their drugs will make it to our shores. So that is going to the president's desk today. But one reason we call this an epidemic is because it cuts across all demographics. It affects families everywhere in America. Take youth athletes. Youth athletes get injured, and then they're prescribed some medication. Before they know it, they are on the path to dependency and addiction. Yesterday, we passed a bill introduced by Pat Meehan of Pennsylvania to help families and students deal with these dangers. You can also be born with a dependency. This is the saddest story of them all. That actually happens every 25 minutes in this country. These babies struggle to eat or even breathe. Yesterday, we passed a bill introduced by Evan Jenkins of West Virginia to help protect infants and to make sure that they get a healthy start. The next step here is that we will take all of these bills we are passing out of the House and go to a conference committee with the Senate. Then we intend to send a bill to the president's desk. And I hope that each and every one of you will be back here when we sign this bill. This opioid epidemic is something that we have to get on top of. I'm very proud of the Republicans and Democrats that have come together to address this situation, because this really is about people's lives. It is about whole communities that are being torn apart. And I believe we can win this fight, and we must. Questions? Chad.
Thank you. I've been reading the joint statement that you and Mr. Trump put out a few minutes ago, and I knew this was the first meeting that I can divine out of that statement that you want to beat Hillary Clinton. You're having trouble.
That is true. We do want to beat Hillary Clinton.
That can't be the only point of unity here. You're having trouble passing the budget here in the House. What makes you think you can get on board with some of the things that Donald Trump is talking about when it comes to politics?
Let me say this. I think we had a very encouraging meeting. Look, it's no secret that Donald Trump and I have had our differences. We talked about those differences today. That's common knowledge. The question is, what is it that we need to do to unify the Republican Party and all strains of conservative wings in the party? We had a very good and encouraging, productive conversation on just how to do that. It was important that we discussed our differences that we have, but it was also important that we discussed the core principles that tie us all together. Principles like the Constitution, the separation of powers, the fact that we have an executive that is going way beyond the boundaries of the Constitution, and how it's important to us that we restore Article 1 of the Constitution. You know, it's the principle of self-government. We talked about life and how strongly we feel about this core principle. We talked about the Supreme Court and things like this. I was very encouraged with what I heard from Donald Trump today. I do believe that we are now planting the seeds to get ourselves unified, to bridge the gaps and differences. And so from here, we're going to go deeper into the policy areas to see where that common ground is and how we can make sure that we are operating off these same core principles. And so, yes, this is our first meeting. I was very encouraged with this meeting, but this is a process. It takes a little time. You don't put it together in 45 minutes. So that is why we had, like I said, a very good start to a process on how we unify.
But you don't think that it's an issue of...
It's Jonathan.
So, Mr. Speaker, I read that statement as well, and I'm still a little confused. Are you endorsing Donald Trump?
Look,
if you're not, what is holding you back? And do you really have a choice? I mean, you're not voting for Hillary Clinton.
The process of unifying the Republican Party, which just finished a primary about a week ago, perhaps one of the most divisive primaries in memory, takes some time. Look, there are people who are for Donald Trump, who are for Ted Cruz, or for John Kasich, who are for Marco Rubio and everybody else. And it's very important that we don't fake unifying, we don't pretend unification, that we truly and actually unify so that we are full strength in the fall. I don't want us to have a fake unification process here. I want to make sure that we really truly understand each other and that we are committed to the conservative principles that make the Republican Party, that built this country. And again, I'm very encouraged. I heard a lot of good things from our presumptive nominee, and we exchanged differences of opinion on a number of things that, everybody knows we have. There are policy disputes that we will have. There's no two ways about it. Plenty of Republicans disagree with one another on policy disputes, but on core principles. Those are the kinds of things that we discussed, and again, I'm encouraged. Craig.
Yeah, okay, so now it doesn't really sound like Rand's previous version where it was a kumbaya meeting. He basically is pointing out the fact that they had a bunch of differences that they're going to have to, I guess, come together and compromise over.
Yeah, I think this is going in a positive direction, and I think this is a first very encouraging meeting. But again, in 45 minutes, you don't litigate all of the processes and all the issues and the principles that we are talking about. I didn't catch that.
Did you offer any assurances that you would change or moderate?
Look, I think it's important that the kind of conversation we had is between the two of us, and no offense, but I don't want to litigate our conversation through the media, because I think when you're beginning to get to know someone, you have a good conversation of trust between each other. So I want to keep the things we discussed between the two of us, because they were very important and they were personal in some senses. And that means we talked about what it takes to unify, where our differences were, and how we can bridge these gaps going forward so that we're strong as a party going into the fall.
That's a fair statement. And again, that's not a kumbaya statement. It's an accurate statement. Paul Ryan, for the most part, is a pretty straight shooter. May disagree with him on points, but as far as him flip-flopping, you don't see a lot of that from Paul Ryan.
Let me give one.
Mr. Trump reiterated his desire to see you as the chairman of the convention in Cleveland, and is that a role that you still want?
He did. I am the Speaker of the House. I am happy to serve in this capacity at the chair of our convention if our presumptive nominee wants me to do so. I see that as it's the delegates who technically make that decision, but I would honor the decision of our presumptive nominee, and he did express that interest. Here we go, Helper.
To what extent, based on his past statements and what he said today, do you think he's committed to reduce him and do on his scope and size?
Yeah. So,
and what do you think of his personality?
His personality, I thought he's a very good personality. He's a very warm and genuine person. Like I said, I met him for like 30 seconds in 2012, so we really don't know each other, and we started to get to know each other. So I actually had a very pleasant exchange with him. That's point number one. Point number two, look, there are just things that we really believe in as conservatives. We believe in limited government. We believe in the Constitution. We believe in the proper role of the differences in the separation of powers. We believe in things like life. I know not everyone is pro-choice in our party, and we accept all comers, but we are a majority pro-life party, and these are things that are important to us. And so we just had a good exchange of views on these kinds of issues. I think he's over having the same conversation with the Senate right now. Our leaders met with him, and everybody expressed opinions and exchanged ideas. And so the point of this is, I think we're off to an encouraging start. It is important that we get ourselves to full strength so that we can win in the fall, because the stakes could not be higher. But it takes more than 45 minutes, Mark.
Besides the government, you're someone who's committed.
We discuss those issues at great detail.
Mr. Speaker, you have defined modern conservatism along the lines of entitlement reform, pro-trade, and immigration, both on the Muslim ban and dealing with the issue comprehensively, virtually not. When you say few problems in this joint statement, aren't you papering over these rather sizable differences in not only how conservatism is defined broadly, but how you have tried to define it for this House Congress?
Right. So I represent a wing of the Conservative Party, you could say. He's bringing a whole new wing to it. He's bringing new voters that we've never had for decades. That's a positive thing. The point, though, is can we agree on the common core principles that unite all of us? We will have policy disputes. There's no two ways about that. All Republicans, Mitt Romney and I didn't agree on everything in 2012. So we will have policy disputes. I'm not interested in litigating the past. I am interested in going forward and seeing where that common ground exists to make sure that we can have a unified Republican Party. That yes, there will be different Republicans that have different views on various policy ideas. The question is, can we unify on common core principles that make our party, and by the way, the principles that built this country, and I'm very encouraged that the answer to that question is yes.
Before the convention, do you intend to endorse it before the convention, Mr. Speaker?
One more over here.
Hi, Speaker Ryan.
Sorry, the lady first. Yes.
You just mentioned the millions of new voters and he's bringing in new people. I was wondering how you actually interpret his success. Is it going to mean the fundamental realignment of the party because of these new voters that he's bringing in? Just how do you interpret his success?
It's really kind of unparalleled, I think. He has gotten more votes than any Republican primary nominee in the history of our country, and this isn't even over yet. He hasn't even gone to like California yet, so it's really a remarkable achievement. So the question is, and this is what we think we can be a party to helping, how do we unify it all? So this is really a big and growing movement. How do we keep adding and adding and adding voters while not subtracting any voters? And to me, that means a positive vision based on core principles, taking those principles, applying them to the problems facing our country today, and offering people positive solutions, and speaking to people where they are in life, addressing their anxieties, and show that we have a better plan. Look, here's what we agree on. A Hillary Clinton presidency would be a disaster for this country. It's effectively a third Obama term. And the other thing we all know is most Americans do not like where this country is headed. 7 out of 10 Americans think America is on the wrong track. We agree with that. So the question is, can we unify around our common principles to offer the country a compelling and clear choice and an agenda going forward so that the men and women of this nation get a real and honest choice about how to fix this country and get us on a better track. And I am very encouraged that we can put that together. I'll go one more on the back.
Thanks for calling us on the cheap seats.
Yes, you got here late.
After your statement last week on CNN, Donald Trump said he was not ready to support your agenda. Did he change his mind today? I assume you talked about Company in America agenda, and did he say he's supportive of that?
We talked about all of these issues, and our policy teams are meeting to just walk through details. So again, this is a process. We just began the process. I'm very encouraged at the first meeting of this process, and going forward, we're going to go a little deeper into the policy weeds to make sure that we have a better understanding of one another. All right. Thank you very much, everybody.
So that told me that, yeah, they sat down, they were cordial, some stuff got put out on the table, but there really was no major consensus other than Hillary Clinton was the enemy, and that Trump was bringing in a bunch of new voters that wanted to see change. This is an interesting analysis that I'm adding to the back of Ryan's news conference, and it's between Ben Ginsburg, who is who was the former attorney for the official attorney for the Republican Party, and Howard Feynman, and both of them give a pretty good analysis of what's going down.
Bring in for more analysis. Thank you, Luke. Ben Ginsburg, former lawyer for the Republican National Committee. Howard Feynman, I think, is still with us as well. So, Ben, I go back again to this statement of honest dialogue. You have Speaker Ryan saying we cannot pretend to be unified when we're not. But is he pretending here that his goal is to roll Donald Trump, to have Donald Trump be the opposite of what he has been, from everything on immigration, from the fluid answer now on banning Muslims, to even, as he pointed out, the separation of power, which it seems that some within the party, and maybe even Speaker Ryan, are not convinced that Donald Trump fully understands?
Well, I'm going to disagree with your basic assumption in the question. I think what you're seeing here is people that do have different views, and they will end up coming together before the convention. And frankly, a Paul Ryan endorsement of Donald Trump, given that what we've seen today and what we've heard, will mean much more and add to much more momentum if it comes on the eve of the convention down the road after having these discussions that do bridge the gap in the Republican Party.
So you're speaking of the theatrics, the drama of it. I'm going, though, back to who would...
No, he's basically saying theatrics and drama. No, it's called a push. And as Trump is actually coming directly into the convention, that endorsement, it would be a tremendous push, giving him further momentum. It's not theatrics, it's not drama, it's basic political. It's a political action in order to propel a candidate further than they might perhaps normally go. She missed it on this one.
Have to, if they are having discussions, policy discussions here, compromise means, in some cases, you move to the middle with things that Donald Trump has proposed, potentially increasing taxes on the wealthiest, protecting entitlements. The list goes on and on. I don't know where the compromise would be with someone like Speaker Ryan is my specific question. Someone seems to have a role in this.
You're on Capitol Hill. Compromise and different parties getting together is part and parcel of what happens over my shoulder every single day. It is what's going on in the Democratic Party as Hillary Clinton gives Wall Street speeches and has to deal with income inequality. It's what happens when you have the Iraq war votes that the Democrats are having to reconcile. It is true in both parties. It happens in the legislative process. This is a discussion of views so that they can get to the same place.
Will it be counted as a flip-flop for Donald Trump if he reverses some of the things that got the largest and most passionate applause lines from these rallies that we've witnessed for many months now?
It will be precisely what you see in Congress when two sides disagree and then come together with a solution. Each side will say they have been enlightened a bit by the other side, and here is common ground we can strike.
Does it mean that Donald Trump is not the outsider, the rebel who shook up your party, and now he is part of the establishment?
Well, I believe that Donald Trump has succeeded in being an outsider by a great number of the ways he has run his campaign, and that he can hang on to his status as an outsider and come up with a policy that can bridge part of the gaps. They're not mutually exclusive, and I think it's a false narrative to think that they are.
And as I pointed out, you're the former lawyer for the Republican National Committee. One of the big questions that is not a legal question, but it could have legal implications depending on what's in his tax returns. Should Donald Trump, as Mitt Romney and others have called on him to do, release his tax returns?
I think what you've seen with candidates who don't release their tax returns is that it becomes a distraction from getting out their more essential message about the campaign. So having been through the Mitt Romney experience in 2012, I think it is better to release tax returns so you can talk about the issues that matter to the American people and not get hung up in the issue of taxes.
But if you're running as a successful business person and you're using that as the primary resume and what you believe you can do for the economy and turn the economy around, is it disqualifying, as Mr. Romney has said, if he does not?
Well, I'm not sure it's disqualifying. If Donald Trump wants to point to being a successful businessman, he can point to dozens of properties around the country with his name on it.
But
he can
those
point
buildings,
to the
some of them are leased names. He does not own all of the buildings with his name on them.
He nonetheless, his name is out there. He employs a lot of people. He makes money so that he is a successful businessman, and the taxes are not going to impact that impression that people have of him.
Do you believe that Speaker Ryan, at this point, I know he says that they need to have many more conversations, but your assessment of the meeting is that he is ready to, at some point, embrace Donald Trump, and the big reveal will be at the convention?
I think it is, well, you have to take them at their word that this is a positive first step, that they are going to work through issues, that both men have compromise and work through to common ground and end up being stronger positions. Paul Ryan in Congress and Donald Trump in business. Neither makes any pretense about there is a way to stick to principles and to find common ground that makes all sides of the equation stronger.
Do we still have Howard Fineman with us?
Yeah, Ben Ginsburg did an excellent job here. He basically called it the way it is. Very little spin. Tamron was trying to get at him, but this guy was, basically can run rings around her politically.
Howard, let's get in on this.
Yes,
What do you
here.
think of how Ben describes this? Because I think that a lot of people will see this as somebody's got a role. And we can call it the way Washington, D.C. works, but the whole thing with Donald Trump is he is not your usual character. He is not your usual creature of Washington, D.C.
No. Well, he still isn't the usual creature, but he knows how to play the game. My interpretation of what we just saw is game, set, match, Trump.
Wow.
Okay, look, virtually everybody else in the leadership, from Mitch McConnell to all the leadership on the Republican side in the Senate, to all the people around Paul Ryan, including Kevin McCarthy and others, have all already endorsed Donald Trump. Okay, they've all done it. Paul Ryan is being careful and cautious and shrewd and actually helping Donald Trump by giving Donald Trump a reason, namely party unity, to modify some of the positions that originally got Donald Trump the attention of the American people. The Republicans have decided, I think, that even though this emperor may have no clothes, they're going to say he's got a beautiful garment on, and they're going to go with him all the way. I think they've decided that it's a win-win for them.
So is the wild card question, Howard, they've reached out a solution for Donald Trump, but is Donald Trump willing to reach back and take their hand, as pointed out right before the interview with Greta Van Susteren, where he said that. So I guess we go back to the question of, is it now in his court, the ball in Donald Trump's court, if he's going to take this help?
Yeah, what's going to happen here is that they're going to find a way to square the circle on the entitlement issue. Donald Trump will say, I'm for preserving Social Security and Medicare, which is essentially a Democratic position, but I'm going to whack the budget elsewhere, and that'll make Paul Ryan at least a little bit happy. Interestingly, they agreed about pro-life issues, even though Donald Trump has his own mixed history on that. They agreed on that today. On immigration, what they're going to do is Donald Trump's going to keep to his position as best he can, give a little on that, give a little on the Muslim ban, and they're all going to cross their fingers and try to go happily to Cleveland, where eventually Paul Ryan will not only endorse Donald Trump, but be the chair of the convention. He said today that he agreed to chair the convention.
Well, based on what you and Ben have presented, all is well now in Republican land, and we should just count down the next few days.
Not saying that. Not saying that. I'm just saying that they're all going to get together behind Trump in the end.
Well, it sounds like they have no choice at this point.
Right,
but
exactly,
the speed of which, as pointed out by Reince Priebus, that all of this, they believe the speed at which it all happened, it kind of caught them, Reince Priebus said, off guard. They thought they had more time and that it would be a more competitive race with Ted Cruz.
Right, but we're watching basically a show being played out here of horror about Donald Trump. In the end, these are practical politicians on the Republican side who, for the most part, swallow their differences and get behind them, if for no other reason than to protect the Republican control of the House and the Senate.
All right, Hallie Jackson is standing by.
All right, so that was pretty much an excellent analysis, both by Ben Ginsburg and Howard Fineman, as to what's going on here.